So afternoon everybody, it's the 9th of March and we are just, so it's a Sunday and I'm just off the Staffordmoor. It's 25 to 1 in the afternoon and we're going to head off to Staffordmoor, probably get there around 3 o'clock, meet up with some mates that we're staying with. We're staying in a little sort of barn conversion just off the site, off of Staffordmoor, at a farm place that we stayed last year. Really enjoyed it, really looking forward to the week. I mean, away from work, which is always nice, isn't it? A little bit of a break. Fishing Monday to Friday. Looks like the weather is going to be relatively dry. I think it is going to go colder later on in the week, but a dry week, which is nice, isn't it? A nice dry week. Fishing for silvers every day. Lovely. Little bit out of practice with it, so fingers crossed to be a little bit bungo. We might need some draws, etc. But I think you need that anyway, don't you? In any festival, but really looking forward to it. I think we came 10th or 11th last year. I think it was 10th. I'll have to look back. But I'd like to go one or two places better, really. I think if I can make top 10, I've got to be happy with that, because I don't really do a lot of silver fishing now. As I say, it's probably a year ago. It was a year ago since I've been to Stafford. A year ago since we fished for silvers, apart from last week at Todber's Ash Lake. So, yeah, I think we need a little bit of luck, a little bit of the rub of the green. So fingers crossed, and I'll see you all on the bank down there tomorrow. Cheers. So we go out with a single maggot first of all, and we caught that small fish. So now we go over with a little tiny piece of worm, just the head of a worm, no bigger than sort of a caster. And we got a skimmer on over that chopped worm. this peg actually sort of goes shallower up to your left. I had a good plumb around, and it's nice and steady, but it sort of goes up shallower on your left. Um, and I wanted to put worm in the on the left hand line, which is in the shallower line, and also because it's towards peg 10, 8, 9 and 10 just recently I've been catching some really good weights. I seen this in the festival the week before, so I wanted to put the worm in that side to sort of draw fish from there, if you know what I mean. So the tackle on this rig is a 4x14 F1 maggot, 014 main line and an 08 hook length, with a size 18 hook. I normally like my 20s and that, don't I, and fish little hooks, but it's an 18 on this because one, we're cleaving the pole around in front of us, so we got to be a bit careful not to pull the hook out these fish, especially the skimmers are quite ploddy, aren't they? You know what they're like. So, and 18 being, you know, little worm heads and things as well, you want that bit bigger hook. I wasn't brave enough to use a 16 and 01 because I just don't know how it's going to fish. It can be notoriously difficult when it switches off. So, but 9 and 10, I have to say, in the section have absolutely stormed off. We're enjoying ourselves. That's a nice stamp of fish, isn't it? And you notice the 2 nets in, that's because there's a £30 rule now on the silvers. Now, I don't want to go anywhere near £30 or risk going over. So yeah, I chucked 2 in just in case. So we had a couple of skimmers on that line. About half an hour we spent on it and 10 minutes or so on the feeder. And then we had to feed our lines and that. So we're probably sort of 45 minutes into the match. So I'm just topping it up with worm now as it seemed to died. And pegs 9 and 10 really have flew off. So our first look over the ground bait line. And this rig's more or less identical to the other one, apart from it's a 4x16. So it's a bulker number 8, it's about 18 inches from the hook. 2 nice positive number 10 droppers. I like positive dropper shot when you're fishing for skimmers. I think you do get a lot of lift bites and it needs to register, so if they lift that number 10 you can see that on the bristle. And on this one it's a backdoor size 20s, isn't it, because we're fishing single maggots, hopefully casters later. So the ground bait line basically ended up being our best line, to be honest, and that worm line never really went mad. And on this ground bait line I found you catch 2, maybe 3 skimmers fishing off the back, off the sides, on top of the ground bait, sort of all around it and over it, and then you'd have to top it up, and you had to sort of give it one good single hand squeeze of ground bait full of casters, put it in, go do something else for 10 minutes, namely looking over that worm line really, hoping for an odd fish, and then back over that ground bait. So we caught about 75% of our fish over the ground bait line. We had a few quality roach, sort of not massive, but there are some massive ones. There's some nice ones in here, sort of up to a pound. And they caught them on pegs 9 and 10. They've had perch to £3, proper bream, hybrids, tench, lovely fishing. We had one little tench, couple of hybrids on the left hand line on the worm, and then over our ground bait we had roach sort of up to 6 ounces and a few skimmers. But a lovely day's fishing. Nine and 10 actually romped the section with perch up to £3, bream, tench, roach to a pound. They've had some cracking fish. They were probably first and second in section within the first 2 hours of the match. To be honest, it was that good there, and everybody else was playing for third. We actually do nab third with a total of £23, which is miles off. I think to peg 9 have. I think they had sort of £38. And then Andy Dare to me right had £13. And then to Andy's right again was fifth in section, then sixth, and so forth. As you went round the section, the weights just sort of dropped off and got worse. And Andy's a terrific angler. You know, I'm not £10 better than Andy. That's just how it is. It was a lovely day and a lovely lake to fish on. Very picturesque, isn't it? £17 exactly. So we targeted, we tried to find a skimmer short, to be honest, early. Didn't happen, but we caught a few little tiny fish, and that sort of kept us ticking over until we tried the long line. Now, I know couple of good skimmers were caught short in this peg yesterday because it won the section with £16. Now, I know this because Dave Smith, who won the section, is actually staying with us in the lodge. There's me, him, Magic, that's Dave Wilmot, and Penfold, which is John Fuage. So the way this wind is coming in, it doesn't look cold, but it's absolutely freezing, and the peg's quite shallow, and I'm not sure those skimmers want to sit in it. And I can't present on that long pole. I've sort of tried, and the float keeps coming back underneath the pole, even with back shotting, and it's sort of whirling around a little bit. So I've decided to flick the feeder on top of the pole line, and this feels a little bit better. It's got quite a few options, this peg, and I've tried to keep it quite simple, and I don't know now with hindsight whether I kept it too simple. To be honest, I sort of fished one sort of positive line out and just thought I got to be positive and do that, and one short line. Looking back, I don't know if it was right or not, but on with the match. We sort of dropped the feeder in, as you can see on the pole line. And then on this chuck, we started putting the tiniest amount of chop worm in. I always think chop worms are sort of a bit of an impact bait. You know, I don't like to fish with it straight away. I like to catch what's there. And I always think when you put in that worm later, it can just draw that attention of that odd fish, can't it? It can make a difference. And I've put a tiny bit of worm on the hook, and we've had to wait a fair while, but this definitely feels like a better skimmer. And it's really what you need. There doesn't seem to be anything in between. We've caught a couple of little skimmers, haven't we, sort of hand-sized jobs, but I mean, other than those tiny, tiny little roach, and they're sort of 2 to the ounce. This is what you're after. These sort of £1.25, £1.50 fish. So this sort of mapped our match out for us. Really, I just decided that's it. Tiny bit of worm or maggot, whatever on the hook, treble pinky, whatever, and just drop it on that pole line. And I figured 4 or 5 more pulls and we win the day. And 15 minutes later, we get another chance. It looks quite calm now, doesn't it? But it does blow up in between. You get these little lulls, and then by the time I get out there with the pole, it just blows up again. Plus, you're breaking the pole down 2 or 3 times every time, and you're catching tiny little fish unless you fish a big bait, and then you're just getting nothing. You're just having to wait too long, as I am on the feeder, really. Which you don't mind so much on the feeder, do you? It's a lot less hard work, isn't it? So at this stage, with this nice skimmer again on that bit of worm, I'm sort of thinking, oh yeah, game on now. But it just never happens. So peg 16 tanners. This is a peg you'd have absolutely ran to last year. But this week it's done absolutely nothing. Now the section was won off a 17 to my right yesterday, and again it was by a lodge mate. It was Magic in there, Dave Wilmot. He's had 25 pound of Carassios on the feeder. Um, but I still fancy 16, although I haven't chucked nothing up. It's a good peg, um, and we've just hooked our first Carassio. They do sort of fight funny, those Carassio. They sort of come in and they sort of jag quite a lot. Strange little things. And as you can see, we're using quite a small reel. Now, a small reel allows for a slow rewind, if you like. And I like when I'm not catching fish, I like to have a slow rewind because I fish quite light and I don't want spin ups and that on the hook lengths. And that's why I fish quite a small reel, and also it's a very light rod as well, isn't it? You've seen this me using this little Silvers rod many times. If I can use this little 9 foot rod, I do. It's very soft, which again allows me to fish lighter than others, and I always think that gives me an advantage. As long as I'm not losing fish in that, I think it's ideal. So two Carassio and two casts, and I'm thinking I'm glad I brought two nets to the peg. To wait 10 minutes, but still it's a second Carassio and on the same line as well. With these Carassio, what you do is if you've got, I mean, this isn't, as I said, this week hasn't been a good peg for them at all. But when you have got a good peg for them, what I found out from last year and this year as well is you chuck sort of 3/4 of the way to your island or whatever, and you just sort of spec fish it really. You don't build it like you're building it a line for skimmers. You spec fish it. So it doesn't matter if it goes down the same hole or not really. And then what you do is if you're not catching them, you just peel off a couple of meters and go again. And you keep going like that sort of every 20 minutes or so till you locate them like I have now. I've caught a second one. And then if I don't catch a third, I peel off a couple more meters and you keep working your way out. You chase them really, or search for them, whichever way you want to look at it. But it's hard to find out really how to do it as well on the feeder. The people who know down here, same as anybody that's competitive, let you know very little really. And I think the ones down here that got it sus without a doubt is probably Des and Andy Dare. They both I've seen Andy catching with it last year very well, and Des certainly does as well. But they like Expander Crush. I know that. I used it quite sloppy on the day, but I do know some people who seem to think drier is better. But I do think one or the other. I think making a little cloud doesn't hurt when the feeder hits the bottom. So 20 more minutes on this same line and it never happened again. So rather than just unclip straight away, I thought I'd try the pole line. We're a couple of hours in, and trying to catch quality skimmers on tanners this week is like trying to find hen's teeth. It really is. And we've hooked one. So putting in a lot of grind bait and caster at the start and then leaving it for 2 hours looks like it's a good move. Yeah, and it's a quality skimmer. Over a pound, maybe a pound and a half. I was expecting smaller fish, so I'm fishing a four elastic, which is absolutely fine. You've just got to take your time a little bit, that's all. Oh, I can't believe it. The hook's pulled. It come up and it's pulled. So 7 or 8 minutes later, and we get a second chance. Another quality skimmer. As I say, it's like trying to find hen's teeth. Finding these quality fish on here, so you really want to take your time with them. Another one that's got a bit of weight to him, hasn't they? Just sitting down there. He comes up out of shot in a minute, and he's probably nudging £2. Now, incredibly, we pull out of that, and you might think, well, bungo, you got to go to a bigger hook or something. But what actually happened when I pulled out of him is I felt him just grate along the side of something. Um, yeah, he grated along the side of something, and I don't know what it was. Some bit of rubbish or something in the ped. Absolutely gutted, to be honest. Went back out on the pole for another sort of 10 minutes. Couldn't leave it any longer than that. And it didn't happen. So I topped up a little ball and went back out on that feeder. Again, that couple of metres past where we caught those couple of Carassios, and we got a third. Which again, on such a rock hard venue at the moment, um, is good. And this feels like a big Carassio as well. Bigger than the last two we've had. And it needs to be after those two lost skimmers, doesn't it? So we're just taking our time. As I say, we're fishing very light, and these fish are they're not coming every 5 minutes. And my hands are freezing. I can't express how cold it is. It looks nice, but it is really, really cold. He's pulling well, this Crassio. It is a quality fish. And the feeder we're using on this is a little 10 gram drenning cage. Again, just all about that lightness, isn't it? It works for me. It makes me confident knowing that my feeder isn't hitting the water heavy, that I'm fishing a bit lighter than everybody else. The chap on my left there, who's sort of the bailiff, I think, down here as well, he knows it very well. He fishes the feeder a lot. He ends up at the end of the match with one Carassio, and I think, you know, when it's hard like this, you just want those little edges, don't you, to try and give yourself a bit of confidence in getting bites. But I do know people who fish like 014 for them down here on the feeder, but they're fish like fluorocarbon, so it's nice and stiff. And maybe that's the right way, I don't know. I'm fishing 01, but they're not going to break you on this light kit and a drag set right on the rod, etc. Now what's happened there? I can't believe it. That's just where I lost that skimmer. It's gone into something. I think there's a branch or something in the water there. Uh, Lost two skimmers on the pole there, and my goose is well and truly cooked, isn't it, today? I mean, three quality fish in the net, and then we lose three in the space of half an hour. You just can't afford to do that on matches like this. I mean, bad luck would be losing one. Losing three is just, well, ridiculous. So Stu on our right on peg 17 didn't have anything until 59 minutes ago, and he's had his first Carasio. He's ended up hooking seven, pulled out a two, landed five, and won the section with £9. So well done him. But looking at those results, you can understand I'm a bit gutted at that, really. These are the realities of match fishing, aren't they?
Well, it's Thursday, Staffordmoor Festival, and it's an open draw again, so anything could happen. Was really hoping for a bit of a flyer. To be honest, after the last 3 days and yesterday's catastrophe, I mean, the section was in our hands, wasn't it? And we sort of let it slip, really. A little bit of bad luck. Well, quite a bit of bad luck, really. Free fish in, a very short space of time. Um, but one of those, that's fishing, especially winter fishing. And I've drawn woodies today in 15. It's like 11 and 12. I've been catching Carasio on the feeder. And I've also got 16 that's got a load of room and like a big tree down in the water. So the chances of winning the section, I'd say pretty much zero. But ever the optimist, we're going to go down and give it our best. See you in a bit.
20 minutes in, and we sort of I've tried the feeder and it hasn't happened. I thought I'd just look, see if there's loads of Carasio there. I'm not going to fish the feeder all day for just a couple of bites. Just too boring, isn't it? So, and we're nowhere, are we, in the festival? So I want to enjoy it. So we've put in that grind bait at 14.5 meters. Now we're going to feed our worm line. I didn't want to feed it initially because I always think worm is quite fairly instant. You only got to wait sort of 10 minutes before you want to go on it, really. So I've tried the feeder for 20 minutes. We're just about to try over the ground bait line, but before we try it, we just drop our worm in where we're going to fish that too at 14.5 as well. And we're off at an angle here, so is when the wind blows, which is meant to get up a little bit, I think it's going to come right to left. I should be able to still see this. I'm a bit concerned about my ground bait line, whether I am going to be able to see it later and present over it, but we'll see. And I've chosen that ground bait line just in front of a sort of lip where it shallows up by about 4 inches. So we're just in front of that lip, which is a nice little sort of natural food holding area, isn't it? But the threat in the section today, without doubt, is Andy Morrison. Really good angler, and he's on peg 12, which has dominated the section every match. And Andy don't make mistakes, so onto the worm after 10 minutes on the ground bait with nothing, and lovely, nice big skimmer. And words fail me. That was a big skimmer gone. It's just unbelievable, isn't it? This week, just can't get a break.
So down the edge where I've been flicking a bit of caster since the start, we're actually an hour and a half in, and we basically got nothing. It's fishing incredibly hard, um, and lo and behold, we've hooked what feels like a skimmer down the edge. It's deep edges and deep in front of me here in this peg, which is why I put it up. I didn't know that until I sort of plumbed up, but yeah, it's deep, much deeper this side than when we were on the other side on that peg free a couple of days ago. Look at that depth. That's my edge. So to cut a long story short, after catching that quality fish down the edge, I decided to feed the right hand edge as well. But we fed that with a little bit of worm rather than casters, and the carp seem to like that worm, don't they? And that's a carp. And I just flick casters down the left hand side, but I have fed a ball of ground bait now. I didn't want to go worm because of the carp action. I didn't want to go loose fed caster because we're doing that to the left. So just in front of us now, and again where it's nice and deep, we've put a ball of ground bait, and then we just try over that worm again. But the worm in the ground bait long doesn't really happen, so I decided on a nice, easy, short day approach. And that's another quality skimmer. What feels like a decent skimmer. Andy Morrison ends up romping the section from peg 12 with just under £30 of Crassios, so well done him. We actually end up with £4 too, believe it or not, absolutely woeful. Um, yeah, it's just one of those, isn't it? But I will say the festival itself, lodge mate Dave Smith ends up winning it with 4 section wins, dropping a sixth, which is sort of testament to how sort of patchy it's fished, really. But he's fished incredibly well, so well done him. Magic managed to snuck up into 7th place overall, and I think Penfold ended up 12th.